Show everybody. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Donna Bush. As your moderator for this session, it is my pleasure to welcome you to a pivotal conversation that marks a milestone in the journey of the Cayman Islands' housing future. Today, we're joined by a panel of experts who will provide insights and guide our discussions here today. I'd like to introduce first to my left, Mr. Johnny J. Mack, the project manager. Next to him is Ms. Patricia Ewing, the stakeholder engagement manager. And next to her is Mr. John Petro, the project research manager. They're all from Public Works LLC consultants. And of course, we're very happy to have them here today, along with our Ministry of Planning, Agriculture, Housing, Infrastructure, Transport and Development Deputy Chief Officer, Ms. Leda Nicholson-Makasara, whose vision has been a driving force in this initiative, actually. And we're going to go first to her to hear some words.
Thank you, Donna, and welcome to the public. Like many countries in the region and or internationally, actually, housing is a big problem. And we've identified that, and under the ministry recognized that this is a very important matter. And under our leadership, Mr. Johanny Ebanks, it was recognized the need to develop a national public and affordable housing policy and a 10-year strategic plan. This document, we're hoping that will serve as a guide to alleviate and solve the housing and sheltering challenges that are most vulnerable and find solutions aiming to decrease the gaps between Caymanians and their ability to purchase affordable homes. Today is about hearing from you, your voice, your ideas, and the future to envision our beloved Cayman Islands. As we go through this session today, I want to remind everybody that this consultation is just a part. This is just one part of our ongoing conversation. We welcome, we encourage you to participate, share your ideas, your solutions, because without your voice, we're not able to formulate this policy. So we thank you in advance for the engagement that we're going to have with you today, and we encourage you. Your participation, as I've said before, is crucial, and its sustained dialogue will carry us forward. We are committed to listening and incorporating your value of insight as we work towards sustainable and affordable housing for our future. Thank you for joining us today. Let's make this session count. Let's get started. Turning it over to Donna.
All right, thank you very much, Leda, for that. Facilitating our public consultation and participation today is Ms. Veronica Zubo, who will ensure that your questions and answers are addressed, fostering a productive and inclusive dialogue here today. You can participate in today's discussion by posting your comments on YouTube as well as the Facebook live stream channels. You can email CI Housing Plan, that's CI Housing Plan at public-works.org, that's .org, or you can send messages via WhatsApp at 1-332-287-9037. Now, the ministry and consultants will be monitoring those questions, and we'll try to answer as many of them as we can get answered here today. However, if you do not get to, we don't get to all of the questions, or you remember one after we're done with this virtual town hall today, you can still submit them via the email and WhatsApp information just shared with you as ongoing input. Your ongoing input is invaluable. Your voice today and beyond shapes the future of housing in the Cayman Islands. We can't stress that enough. So let's begin. We do have some questions that came in earlier, so we're going to begin with the first one to the panel, which is, what exactly is affordable housing?
I can take that on, Johnny. So,
Go ahead.
well, affordable housing a lot of times places will define affordable housing as a percentage of income, right? What that exact percentage is might vary from country to country. So part of our work here is to get a sense of what that level might be here as a percentage of household income. We're hearing that the housing market here in Cayman is unique in that there's a lot of upfront costs, there's a lot of ongoing costs, and so we've got to bring all that data together and come up with some ideas of what that figure looks like here.
Okay. Okay, anyone else? That's it, I think that fully explains it. So exactly who's the plan for? We say Caymanians, residents, who's the plan for?
The plan is for all our citizens, actually. Housing it will touch everybody. It touches from the old to the young.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to make sure that we have a comprehensive policy that will look at all these issues and the issues that are faced by many. So we want to make sure that everybody have your voice. Please call us in, say what you have to say, because it does impact everybody.
Okay. So what are some of the unique things about the housing situation in Cayman with our population, the dynamics of our population size comparable to, you know, other islands that might be in similar size? What exactly is our housing situation like here that makes us unique?
Cayman is unique in so many different ways. It has developed over time, and particularly in recent years, there's been a significant influx of individuals and investment that has put a significant demand on housing at various levels throughout the spectrum of the Caymanian community. And so in many ways, other islands in the region have not had that type of development and economic growth. And so those are challenges that impact not only housing, but the surrounding and ancillary aspects of the Caymanian society. And these are very unique to the Caymanian islands. And those are some of the things that we're looking at. And as has been said before, we want to hear from you on what are some of those unique circumstances that we as consultants may not know unless you tell us.
That's a very interesting point. You know, the growth has provided some challenges as well as some opportunities on the other hand.
Yeah.
Right? And the fact that housing does touch so many aspects of daily life, from the economic, the overall economy, to personal finances, to the idea of a family, to health,
That's right.
infrastructure, sustainability. Everything is touched by housing, and housing touches all of those things.
And housing is a Caymanian value. Having a house, having a home is something that Caymanians revere, and it's a value in and of itself, and we want to make sure this report supports and our ideas, and PAHI itself's goal is to make sure that they're following those values and they create something that is Caymanian focused and is of Cayman.
And something that captures their voice, the public voice, in every aspect. So.
Okay. One of the big things for Caymanian people across the board and people who've made Cayman their home for decades at a time is the cost. Why is housing so expensive here in Cayman?
Well, there's a couple different reasons. One being that there's only so much land, right? It's an island nation, only so much land to build on, and so whenever something is scarce, there's a value added to that, right? We're also seeing, Cayman is a vacation destination. People want to come here and spend time, and that has effects on the market. Both there are, again, opportunities and challenges associated with those concepts.
And internationally, housing prices have increased since COVID, and Cayman needs to understand and address what those issues are and how those costs have risen. But everywhere across the world, actually, housing prices have increased, and the ancillary costs, energy, insurance, those sorts of things also have increased a great deal. And the goal of the plan under PAHI's directive is to find out not just what the increased cost is for housing, but all the ancillary costs that support a house so that you can stay in it, and you can stay in it over time comfortably.
Yeah, sustainable living, that's what we're aiming for.
Right.
One of the things that I've heard frequently, from persons in the public is the good thing that Cayman's building standards are so high. You can comparatively buy a home somewhere else in small market size, and the house is a lot less expensive. But when you come to the construction and what the materials that are used, it doesn't compare to somewhere like Cayman. So that would be obviously a big factor in building homes that are stronger, right?
Yes.
That are more sustainable as it relates to being in a hurricane belt, for instance. We're able to withstand stronger winds and what have you. But the next question is, what can government do to help the younger residents, they're college-age students who are out there that hope to come home one day and be able to afford a home? What's government doing to help them?
So that's one of the things we've tasked our consultants to look at as well.
Right.
And we've heard from, because this is not the first session, so we've heard from some of the youths, young people, with regards to the challenges that they face. So we have to incorporate things that will benefit them. We want our young people to go off to college if that's their desire, but to come back home, to live home, to raise their family here. We don't want a brain drain. We want our people to stay here.
Right.
So it's putting things and making recommendations that will have them stay, come back, own a home. As Pat said, that's their desire. Everybody's desire is to own a home and raise their family here. We have, as you said, Donna, we're amazing. I'm a little biased, but having everybody here and live on Cayman and the safety and everything else that comes with it. So it's to encourage them to come back home.
And one of the things with the report that we're creating is that with Leda and Damara, we have done 2 focus groups with young people, one on BRAC. We just came back from BRAC, and we had folks in another town hall there come in from Little Cayman, but we also did a youth town hall here.
Right.
So we're trying to get as many voices as we can and as young as possible from 15 up to see how they're progressing in their housing and what their ideas are, because ultimately you want someone either if they want to get a trade, go into a trade, or they want to do that, but that they can live here, they can support a family, they can own a home, and if you're going abroad or for college, come back and successfully have a family and have a life.
I think it's important to consider that this is a 10-year plan, right? And who's going to be impacted a decade from now? It's the youth. And Pat was talking about these focus groups we've had, and it's just been amazing to hear the voices of the youth. They're so well informed of the issues.
Right.
It is
Right.
very, very
Very smart, very aware.
very energizing to
Yeah,
meet
it
with
was.
them. But at the same time, they also have questions and they have anxiety about the future. Yeah, that's what we're hearing.
Okay, thank
But we
you.
have brilliant minds to
You
your
do.
point. Yes, brilliant. I mean, amazing ideas and solutions that these young people came at the focus group with. So we're very encouraged.
That's awesome. Before we move on, I'd just like to repeat the email address as well as the WhatsApp number for those of you who are joining us and want to get your questions and comments in. That email address again is cihousingplan@public-works.org. The number to WhatsApp is 1-332-287-9037. Okay, so let's move on with to our next question, which is when Mr. Petro just mentioned it's a 10-year plan. So when will everyone begin to see changes?
Well, we're hoping to have the plan complete the 3rd quarter of this year. So we're aiming for that, and we will deliver on that.
Okay, all righty.
And there will be likely short-term, medium-term, and long-term objectives,
Right.
right? So we're going to be looking at what can be done in the shorter term, what can be done in the medium term, and the longer term as well.
Okay, so we've spoken a little bit about our younger population. What about our older folks? How is this plan going to help them find housing?
Well, as we've indicated, not only are we talking to young people, we're reaching out to the entire Caymanian community. And so these focus groups not only include youth, but they also will include senior citizens and the elderly. We've not had that focus group just yet, but we will be reaching out to them as well.
And we have spoken to some of the organizations in Cayman that represent senior citizens and represent older people, and we're hearing their concerns for housing, for everything from how to keep, their goal is to keep someone in their home longer. So how do we do that? so that they have the facilities they need, that they can get the care that they need. And so we are starting that conversation now.
Okay, all right. We do have a question directly from the public. This person says, it's not only about availability of land, which drives up the cost, but because of the free market type structure that is here in the Cayman Islands, plus no property value evaluation control. What are some ways that government might step in to address this?
Well, there's a couple different ways you can get at the problem generally, and I'm not speaking to exactly specifics of what, because we're not at that stage yet.
Right.
You can look at different ways. You can look at just expanding the supply of housing generally. That's going to bring down the costs. You can look at finding ways of bringing down the actual cost of building the houses, right? The construction costs. You can look at ways of lowering the cost of financing, perhaps, right? Or you can find ways of supporting people directly, right? That might mean income supports of some sort. So those are all kind of general strategies that one could look at to address that issue. But we need to consider the whole basket
Right.
of potential strategies and figure out what is best for Cayman, because we can look at a policy that exists somewhere else, and that doesn't mean it's going to work here, right? We need to think about the specific, unique environment.
And it is about affordability and availability. So, and also affordability over time.
Right.
So as costs increase, whether it's energy or insurance, et cetera, that those are key pieces to keeping and owning a home and successfully having that home. So we're looking at those as well.
Okay. Another question is, what are some of the barriers to affordable housing that you've been hearing about so far?
We've heard about access to capital.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was one of the big ones, and that
So
came
mortgages.
straight across. Yes, exactly. That came straight across the board, from the old to the young.
That's right.
So that was one of the big ones that came across.
Right, availability,
Yeah, availability of it.
finding a kind of home that you want and having it actually be available is also one.
We touched on the cost of materials, which have been going up, up and up and up, yes, and that's worldwide.
Yeah. You also mentioned earlier, Mr. Petro, about land availability, because, talk about building houses all you want and property all you want, but if there's no land to build it on. So it's just, it doesn't make sense. So is building up an option? And then when I say building up, building upwards instead of outwards, and on those pieces of property. And then are those things that are considered when you have your different, like older folks wouldn't necessarily, fit into a place that is built up, because, in years later they'll be ailing and they can't walk upstairs and all those types of things. So are all these things being considered, obviously?
Yeah, everything is being considered, as John and Johnny has said, that we're looking at, everything, the whole basket. We are considering those things, and we've heard from the public as well.
That's right.
That they are considering those things. We heard from the young people group that those things are something that they would look at once the proper amenities is provided within
Right.
that. So they're not closed to any options, and our job is to look at all those options and and to see what's best fit here.
We were just talking to a senior citizen group that wanted to build up, because if it's in an elevated building, as long as the doors are wide enough for a wheelchair,
Right.
that it's actually accessible. And if it's in Georgetown, and then they can get to a shop, they can get to a grocery store. So people are, the Caymanians we've spoken to so far have a really big imagination about the kind of homes that they would like, and it's broader than just a single family home in a suburb.
Right.
So density and zoning is important then.
Yeah.
So how do you find the land and the zoning and the, you have to have that as in consideration. How do you build the homes that are needed?
And what's appropriate in one place might not be appropriate in another place, right? If we're thinking about density, where should that go? And you have to carefully consider things like, where are the jobs, where's the infrastructure, where can the infrastructure actually support that density? So what might be appropriate in one area may not be appropriate in other areas, right?
Well, we're obviously talking about the three Cayman Islands here. So how does this policy, or how will this policy apply to our sister islands of Little Cayman and Cayman Brac?
Well, one of our first public meetings was held over in the sister islands. We did Little Cayman and Cayman Brac,
Right.
because it is, as you said, the Cayman Islands. So we want their views as well. And as they expressed to us, that sometimes they have some unique things are different from Grand Cayman as well, so we have to take those into consideration.
Right.
That was a very early lesson for our team, is that, things you have to consider the sister islands differently than Grand Cayman.
Yes.
They have
Absolutely.
specific needs and culture.
And even from Little Cayman to Cayman Brac, it differs, right?
It differs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we're considering all of those things.
Okay. The next question relates to education for young people, financial literacy. It's way overdue in our local schools.
We've heard that.
Yeah.
It's been
Actually,
fascinating.
we've actually heard it from the youth themselves.
Yeah, the two focus groups
That's
we
right.
did with youth, both of them brought up financial literacy, that it's so complicated to get a mortgage, and they want to know how to do it from an earlier age so they can save correctly and they can meet the needs, because they realize how home ownership is going to set them up for their lives.
Absolutely.
So it was actually quite heartening. Nobody asked us how to get a car, you know what I mean? It was like they were actually interested in the future of their home and how to have a successful family, a successful life, and that was really lovely to hear.
Yeah. We have another question from the public. This person is asking, how do we plan to maintain diverse communities and avoid isolated areas of one tax bracket or even nationality?
Well, the concept of mixed income communities is an important concept, and it's something that we're seeing from other places is considered a best practice. I think there's a move away from this idea that a certain class of people over here, a certain class of people over here, and there are certain models that bring this together in a way that works for everybody. Absolutely.
And one of the things we've heard, it's a Caymanian value in which multi-generational families live together and live in one area, and incomes were never stratified. So holding on to that value, and there's a lot of information that when you do isolate by age or by income, it actually leads to the detriment of a community itself. And that encouraging mixed use, as you were saying it, actually creates vibrancy and health.
Mixed use and mixed income.
Right,
Yes,
mixed use
yes.
and mixed income, correct.
Okay. I think a lot of us know about the Cayman ideal, which is to have, your land, your house, a garden these days, more for vegetables than for flowers. But will this plan mean that we will lose, or we could potentially lose that ideal?
No,
No.
I don't think so at all. I think, as I think we've been saying, we're looking at a number of things. We're looking at the mixed use, where you have all the amenities that would cater to a certain demographics, but you're still keeping that. We heard from many that they still want to have that backyard. They want to have the single homes. So we're looking at a number of things, and as I think it was said here again, it is what best suits for even the various districts. And it can, why not combine and have, mixed use, have the single family dwellings as it exists the rest of the world.
One of the things we've heard too is that home ownership is the value and less about the type of home. So home ownership as the value.
Okay.
And so they're actually, as we're teasing it out, whether they're young people or seniors or et cetera, people who need it, we're teasing out that they're more open-minded to the type. They just want to own that home and they want to have that security. So we're looking at that.
Okay. We have another question from the public. This gentleman is asking, how does the government plan to balance the need to attract foreign investment in the real estate market with the goal of ensuring affordable housing for Caymanians? Not quite sure we can answer that, but that's...
Yeah, well, we thank the writer for that. That's a big question, and I don't have the answer, but it is a balance that we are going to have to be looking at, because we want both, and it's just strike that right balance that's going to benefit our people.
Okay. Another question. When is the revised Residential Tenancies Act coming for public consult? And because this plays a major part on the housing strategic plan. Are you aware, Ms. Leda?
I don't have the date. I know that falls under a different ministry,
Right.
Ministry of Lands. So it would be wrong of me to actually state that. I know that they're actively working on that plan, so we can, but I don't have the date of when it's going to be out for public consultation. But I know their active work is going on.
Okay. Another question is, how can we make sure that the homes that we will build in the future will be able to withstand hurricanes and climate change?
Well, I think you actually, Donna, mentioned that well, that we're proud of our planning codes and how we have withstand throughout the years. I mean, we've seen, devastating hurricanes come through, and we can still live and talk about it, and our homes are still standing. So we've done well in that area. I think what has been brought up in these consultation and focus group is the process in which we get those approvals. So I think they like the comfort of knowing that our code can withstand, but it's just the process.
Even something to consider. Obviously, your consultants would do that, but where you build on the island, hurricanes usually come from the east, from the south a lot. Those homes would obviously have to be looked at differently as if you build in West Bay or even Central Georgetown. So yeah, another question is, the question is, my light bill keeps going up. Why can't we have more solar power in the homes that may be built in the future? Is that something that's being considered?
Well, I think as a government as a whole, I know that the Ministry of Sustainability is presently doing studies, and we're working with them. We're not working in isolation. We're working from ministry cross-ministerial, so I know that they are actively doing something on that, and I'm sure the public will hear about it fairly soon. With creating models on homes that persons can use and see how best they can adapt and what the cost is and how it can benefit their light bill in the end. So.
I've personally also heard people, talk about the solar panels and stuff that are becoming much more popular these days. And we haven't had a devastating storm like an Ivan back in 2004 to even prove how they're going to work, how they're going to affect roof systems, that sort of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
But there are other things that one can do when building them homes. I mean, I'm by no means a contractor, but there are other little things that one can do. And I think even, in the private sector, they're normally, PSAs talking about things that, one can do to lower those bills.
There's also, and there's also hurricanes in other parts of the world that have and solar panels have withstood, and we need to look at that. What are the best practices that people have gone through with their homes intact and the solar panels did well?
Yeah, okay. Another question from the public. Will the government be releasing any financing options to assist Caymanians with home ownership, given the U.S. prime interest rates, which were pegged to at recent all-time highs, that they've been pegged to at recent all-time highs?
Well, our consultants are tasked with looking at those as options as well.
That's right.
So we're hoping that we will get some whether it's short-term, whether it's medium-term, recommendation along those lines that will further assist government in making those decisions that will benefit our people. We recognize the need and the urgency of it. And I think we should mention that everybody has a social responsibility as well, even the lending institution. So I'd like to stress that too. But there are mechanisms that we need to look at again.
In fact, this first phase is primarily a stakeholder phase, and listening to the public and talking to the private sector. But in this next phase, we will be looking at the whole financing aspect of developing the plan. So we will definitely be making recommendations in this regard.
Okay, thank you for that. This next question asks, why should we be looking at building homes when we have such huge traffic issues?
That's a very good question. Well, there are ways of building sustainably in ways that you can build smarter. Smarter planning can help alleviate some of those issues, right? And one of many factors that we need to consider when we're developing these plans. As we said earlier, housing impacts so many different things, from the transportation and the infrastructure. We have to look at the water infrastructure as well as the roads infrastructure, right? We're hearing that public transit is going to have to be a piece of this picture, right? If we want to develop East End, we got to solve that problem. And there are ideas out there. It's just, what is the appropriate idea? What makes the most sense?
Right.
I think you're hearing that we've hired these consultants that are experts, and they are looking at all aspects. So we want to encourage the public to give them their feedback, because they are listening. So I just wanted to plug that they're looking at all aspects, and they're not going to just pull a plan from somewhere else. They're going to Caymanize that plan, and your voice is going to be incorporated into that plan.
You know, Leila, in that regard, Leila, we have a public survey that we encourage all Caymanians to, you can go online and take the survey. That's another way for us to understand what Caymanians are thinking about and what's going to be most important to them. So,
And that will
really
be out
encourage.
in the next, when do you think that will?
Should be out by the end of this month.
Terrific.
We're already February, so yes, and we're encouraging. Yes, Johnny, thanks for reminding us of that.
It's another way to contact us.
Yes.
Okay. We may have addressed this already, but another public question. Will the policy look at subsidies, grants, whatever you want to call them, to low and middle income residents who are already struggling to afford housing?
As we said, part of the whole financing, the whole economic structure of developing, this housing plan will consider the affordability and the incentives that will be necessary so that Caymanians can afford, a livable, comfortable home.
Okay. Another question, what can we do about, speaking of investment, what can we do about people from other countries buying land in Cayman? Do we need to put something in place that protects land space for Caymanians? I guess is the broader question.
Yeah. Well, we've heard comments about that as well. So we're taking all of those things into consideration. We've heard it from, again, numerous of our focus groups and individuals that have mentioned looking at that. So that's on the table as well, that we would look at that and possibly come up with some recommendations.
Okay. Anyone else want to say something about that? No? Good. Okay. Are there any policies and affordable housing programs from other countries? I think John may have mentioned this earlier. From other countries that might work here in Cayman. I mean, we talked about Caymanizing it, but obviously there are going to be good bits from other countries that may be similar in size, and so on and so forth.
Well, that's an important part of our research, right? We're saying that this is the consultation phase. This is where we learn about the current state, what currently exists, right? From there we can determine the needs. Then the next stage of research is looking at what is out there, what solutions have been working elsewhere, what might be the most appropriate, and then how to shape that policy in a way that is most applicable here, right? What might be a problem, say, in the US might not be the same type of problem here. And so if you use that solution, and the solution doesn't match the problem, you're not going to make much headway. But that's a big part of our research, is looking at what's happening elsewhere, right? And we're already hearing ideas. People are saying, hey, look at what's going on here, and look at what's going on here. And we take a note. It's just, I'm going to look into that. Yes,
We've talked
absolutely.
in the focus groups, we've actually talked to Caymanians who've looked into this themselves, and they're saying, this happened in the UK, and this. But one of the trends in housing that we're looking for is, and I want to expand on this a little bit, is mixed use and mixed income. Because a lot of housing around the world right now isn't being built in silos. It's actually, a piece of it is seniors, and the seniors are living next door to those, people with young children. And it might be a mixed income building, or it might be a mixed income community. And it does create this wonderful vibrancy in which this community can thrive. So that is one thing that we have seen successfully around the world, that it actually supports a Caymanian value, which is taking care of your own and taking care of your family and living within a multi-generational home and community.
Okay. Before we move on, I just want to remind everybody of the email address and the WhatsApp number that they can get their questions in, as well as just to remind everybody about the survey that's coming out at the end of February. It will be posted on the website, and of course you'll hear about it all over the place, so that you can get yourselves involved in the survey to help our consultants, better come up with a better plan for us. So again, that email address is cihousingplan@public-works.org. The WhatsApp number is 1-332-287-9037. Get your questions in. We have about 30 minutes left, so we just want to be able to answer all of your questions for you with our panel of experts here. So we know that we're like 135 nationalities strong. There are persons from all over the world that are represented here that may not necessarily be able to afford. They may be now Caymanians by rights and legally, but can't necessarily afford, the type of housing that a Caymanian-born person may be able to afford. Is that going to be something that's going to be addressed? And how? Any ideas?
Well, yes, of course. Our plan focuses on all residents in Cayman. So, irrespective of who you are, or what you are, or your employment choices, our look is at every opportunity to provide housing for every individual who is a part of the Cayman Islands.
But I think this kind of brings up some of the maybe complexity of the task that is ahead of us, is that we do have to we're not looking at one segment of the market. There's all different types of markets. There's all different types of people that need housing, from maybe migrant workers,
Correct.
to Caymanian residents,
right,
to the expats that come here to work, right? All those pieces have to fit together in some way or another. So it's a complex project. We have to be realistic about the work that we have ahead of us in the next months, right? But such an important part of what we're doing is talking and engaging with each of these different populations, these people, and really hearing from them, what are their needs. We can sit from 1,000 miles away and think of what we think might be the real needs, but without talking to people and hearing from them directly, we really can't make those final conclusions. And that's why this process is so important. We keep talking about, please send us your comments, please send us your questions, please fill out this survey. When the survey is out, we have the WhatsApp number and all of those channels for you to reach us and to talk to us about what those needs are, so that we can hear from every single segment of the population.
And not everybody wants to own a home.
Right.
And not everybody, that's not their desire, and it's not their family. So we have to look at rental markets, and we have to look at what's available. And because it isn't just, not everybody wants to do it. And somebody might have owned a home, they want to sell a home, now they want to rent. So there's mobility. You might be young, out of college, and you want to rent first, so what is available. So we're looking at the type of housing that Caymanians want and they need.
Ms. Petro mentioned migrant workers. Ms. Leda, who should be responsible for making sure that our migrant workers, can afford appropriate and safe housing in Cayman?
That's a good question, Donna. Is it the actual employer? Is it the individual themselves?
One thing we know is that it has to be a public and private solution together.
Yes.
That's something we're hearing from, yes, the public sector, but also the private sector is very aware that they have a part to play in this,
That's right.
And so that's a dialogue that we are facilitating.
In fact, John, we were in a meeting this morning with a private sector developer who himself brought up the issue of migrant workers and how his own company has certain responsibilities to those workers, including housing. And so that's the kind of feedback we're getting from the Caymanian community.
Yeah. So Donna, to answer your question, I think everybody has to bear some responsibility. It cannot be left all on the government to solve these issues.
That's
Okay.
right.
So much of the housing that's being built is not for some people, it's not for me. How can we be sure that new housing is for Caymanians?
That's the goal of this project.
Yeah.
There are some, there's development going on that supports, that is doing well, that's supporting a certain class of people that are Caymanians and people abroad, and it's functioning. And then the question is about the rest of Cayman and what their needs are and their desires for housing. So there is a housing shortage, there is availability issue, there is an accessibility issue, and that's what our goal is. That those houses that, you know, will take care of themselves, that market can take care of itself, that is a higher end market.
Another person, Mr. Mack, you had something to say?
No.
Okay. The next question was, should the policy include minimum energy efficiency standards for new and existing homes to, in fact, help reduce utility costs for homeowners and renters that currently exist? Should that be included in the policy?
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
a good question, yeah.
Okay.
And that's the type of feedback that we like to hear, you know, that people are thinking about these things, that this is a consideration, something that they would like to see, right?
Because we may want to recommend it, but if the public doesn't tell us that they need it or want it, so even just getting that feedback is helpful.
Okay. So another question is that they'd like us to ask you, the experts, if you're working with or have appraised what the healthy human capacity is for each island to ensure a thriving community, so each of the Cayman Islands. I'll repeat the question. If you're working with or have appraised what the healthy human capacity is for each of our islands.
It's an interesting concept.
It's an interesting concept. I think our
Yes.
desire is for the different islands to assess that to us directly. And that's been our process.
Right.
So listening to, hearing on an ongoing basis, not just a one-time thing, to have the ability to access us, for them to describe it and tell us.
Right.
Because even in our focus group the other day, Little Cayman's needs are very different than BRAC's, let alone Grand Cayman. And us listening to that will get to that point, but it has to come from the community.
Right.
I like that idea of health, of thinking this through health, because there's so many different aspects of health. There's actual physical health, right? And housing actually impacts physical health, and we know that. Housing instability will lead to greater incidences of poor health, right? Then there's the financial health, right? The financial health, the ability of a household to plan for the future. And then there's the actual, maybe, let's say, the health of the natural environment as well is something that we need to consider. Island nation, it has only, it's has its own vulnerabilities, and we need to be aware of those and to really ensure that the natural environment remains healthy as well.
There's one other, and that's the health of the community itself. And a housing plan must take into consideration the health of the community. Well done.
Another question from the public, actually it's a member of the media, asking about subdivision standards. Like, let's say, you put in a group of homes, and you can go across the island and you can see like some subdivisions because persons may be, that are from the neighborhood are primarily blue-collar workers, or they're more in the lower end of the minimum wage, and their homes are not, like, there's no standards on what kind of fencing they can build, what kind of, if they can keep derelict cars in their yards. Like, this person's asking, like, will those types of things be in these, written in the policy so that it's, once somebody purchases a home or gets a home through the government or private-public partnership, that there'll be certain standards that they have to abide by when getting their homes?
I think our Department of Environment or Public Health have certain standards that they really should. Now, the problem with that is policing that, maybe. So those things exist, and there are policies and legislation that probably exist and guide those already. So I don't foresee it. I mean, I can't say that now. We don't know. We're going to, to say if it will include, but I know that there are policies and laws that speaks to those sort of, derelict vehicles and that exist already. It's just a matter of policing those.
Leda, you are right. Among the various groups that we're speaking to, both within government, outside of government, but within government, is the ministry, hazard ministry and sustainability ministry. All of these factor into the discovery process and then ultimately findings, conclusions, and recommendations. And so all of this will be part of the basket of things that we will be looking at to ultimately develop the plan. John?
So yeah, the quality of the housing stock is certainly, something that needs to be assessed, right?
Yes, that's right.
When we're talking about a housing plan, we're not just talking about building housing, we're also talking about preserving the housing that exists, making sure that it's safe and habitable, right? What are the mechanisms to do that? As Leda mentioned, that there may be laws on the books currently. We need to look at those, and we've begun looking at the codes to understand, and again, that's where best practices come into it. You can make a comparison, right? In what ways are they different, and how can you maybe apply what's worked elsewhere? And again, this points to just the complexity of the task. It's not just one single aspect we're looking at. We're looking at this whole universe of issues that are interrelated, and housing quality is certainly one of them.
We have a few more questions, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the timeline to wrap things up. This is a two-part question. It says, currently only the National Housing Development Trusts are government approved to provide affordable housing and benefit from smaller lot sizes. Will the policy plan address this? The second half of the question, enable self-builds, organizations, and developers to contribute to affordable housing provision. So kind of like what Mr. Mack alluded to earlier about the private-public partnership. So, yeah.
So in short, yes. We know presently only the National Housing Development Trust, have those mandates, but it is looking at other possibilities. It is looking at how we can, the zoning laws we've mentioned here, that would possibly extend to that. So.
And lot sizes are one of many ways that you can look at reducing the cost of providing housing, right? If you can fit more homes on a lot, those homes are going to be less expensive generally.
Right.
Generally would be the case, right? So all the aspects of different tools that could help bring down the cost of housing are things that we need to look at. And we're hearing that this is an issue, and there may be others out in the private sector that are interested in being a part of this solution, right?
Correct.
How can they be a part of this solution? That sounds like one idea.
Right. Okay. All right, we're going to go into the timeline now. So the policy plan, what's the timeline for the policy plan?
Well, like I said, Donna, we're aiming for a delivery date of the third quarter of this year. This is the consultation phase. We'll go through that, and that's why it's imperative that we get the feedback and we get the public's ideas and their solutions to help frame that. And then we go into the other phase and of analyzing that, the data. And John, if you guys are the expert as well, so please, by all means, if I'm leaving anything out. And then formulating the plan. Once we've formulated the plan, then we have to take it to the powers that be for them to have a look and see what we're proposing. And get that approval, and the intent is for us to go back to the public with the plan. So you will be able to, so the public will be able to see that we've listened, we've heard them,
Right.
And incorporated the solutions, the recommendations into what we've heard. So again, I can't stress it enough how important it is to have your voices heard.
Okay. Before we move on with the actual timeline for, let's say, the affordability initiatives and the insights, we do have another question, sort of a statement from one of the viewers. It says, workshops, consultations are great, but an affordable housing policy must be based on a formal community assessment in order to define type. I think we've been saying that. Type, tenure, amount, mix of affordable housing. Will such an assessment be undertaken? Does your research include that? Yeah, I think
Of
we
course.
pretty much said
Yes.
that. It has to include that, right? And that's what's happening.
That's the beginning.
now.
It's part of the beginning, and
Right.
we have census data, right? There's census data that is collected here in the islands, and it's an important piece of our evidence gathering is looking at that data, and we hope to maybe dig one level below that data too, and get even more context and drill down and get even finer and more, let's say, data that's going to help us get at more specific solutions, right? We need to assess the needs. Sorry to repeat myself, but yes, that's part of was one of the stages of the process. We're going to define the current state, we need to define the needs, we need to figure out what the gap is, and then we need to figure out what's going to bridge that gap.
Okay. If we could backtrack for a moment, how were the persons involved in the focus groups determined? How were they formed?
Well, we've had various means. Some persons have just actually written into the website and actually asked for a consultation. We have worked with the Ministry of Youth, for example, with regards to formulating and meeting with some of the youth in the BRAC and here in Grand Cayman. We have worked with the Ministry of Sustainability as well to look at that clientele, to speak to them. We have reached out to both private and public sector persons for them to be able to voice. But if we have not, and if somebody feels that they want to, then by all means reach out to us via the email so that we will make contact with you, and we could do the consultants are doing one-on-one
That's right.
consultation as well. So
And we have this,
yes.
which is a
Yes.
public town hall, a virtual town hall, and we had one on BRAC, which included Little Cayman, which was public, and we let the public know that we were going to be there and what time it was, and et cetera. So we tried to work with that, and I want to say that
survey.
Oh, yes, and the survey. But I want to say that the Caymanian government, we have been meeting with all different departments, and they've been amazing. They've been helpful, and they've been desirous. They've realized this is a need, from planning to all the different departments, and it's been really encouraging to get the data that research needs in order to facilitate this and to plug the survey. The survey coming out is truly valuable, and it will be out soon.
Okay. Can we talk a little bit about the affordability initiatives, that how that's going to be rolled out, what the timeline is on that, at what stage we might be talking more about
The
that?
affordability initiatives.
Are we talking about the project timeline, or are we talking about once the consultants are done, what is that timeline? What do we-
We're talking about all phases.
All
So
phases.
consultants finished,
So John, maybe you
timeline
want to talk about the
project,
project timeline?
Well,
We just
I think we just did that.
the end of.
I'm not sure I have the full context, but in terms of an affordability timeline, I think that you mentioned earlier, John, that this is short-term, near-term, long-term. Cayman's housing solution is not something that's going to happen overnight. We are laying the foundation for a long-term, sustainable, durable, viable plan that sets the future for those very youth that we were talking about. And so we will need products and mechanisms for affordability, not only today, but at each phase of the process within the 10-year strategic plan and beyond. So I don't know that there's a specific schedule that one might have for affordability.
Sure.
But the public should know that our approach is to ensure that this is a plan that doesn't sit on a shelf somewhere, but it's an actionable plan that can be used and the public can rely upon for the future sustainability of Cayman Islands.
I think that's music to the ears of the people who are out there listening, and will listen to this after we finish this live today. I do have another quick question before we wrap up, so for you to give us any final thoughts. The final question is, people are saying that Airbnbs are making it hard to find a home on Grand Cayman. How do we make sure that there are enough homes for Caymanians to live in? I think we've been pretty much covering that base, but if we could just kind of reiterate to our viewers out there.
Well, that's something we hear a lot. We're hearing, right? And again, our first phase is to take that information, but we also have to confirm it, right? We have to look at the hard data underneath to give us an idea of what impact it's having.
Yes.
I don't know that anyone argues that it's not having any impact, but what is the scale of the impact? And without knowing that, then you can't really create the right instrument to look at it.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, so as we draw to a close, any final thoughts on our conversation today?
I just want to thank you and the public for tuning in. I want to encourage them to continue this process, to continue to reach out to us so that we can hear from them. Everybody has a voice. So from the old to the young, if you're old and you're sitting at home, you say, I don't know how to use get your granddaughter, your niece or your nephew to send us your questions in and your comments in so that we can take it into consideration. We want to hear from everybody so that when we formulate this policy, we can truly say that it's driven by us, our Caymanian people. So we want to hear from you. So please do so.
Okay, Mr. Mack, Ms. Ewan, Mr. Petro, any final words as the experts on this much needed project, and one that, I'm sure that, you all want to get right, right?
We absolutely do, and I would say that Public Works LLC is simply delighted to be part of this important process. And we've found there's a real passion and desire for what is best for Cayman, and we're just, we feel, what's the word I want?
Grateful.
It's a privilege to be part of this important project.
It is.
Okay. Patricia, any final words from you?
The passion and the commitment to a better Cayman of the people that we have met is inspiring. And everyone we have spoken to has an idea, and they have a desire, and they want a better community. And that in and of itself has been made our job, my job and our job easier. And also raises it a little bit because we want to do such a good job for them, because they do care so much about, the people that we're meeting care so much about where they live, and they want something better for their future.
Okay, Mr. Petro?
Yes, this has been a great opportunity to learn more about the people here and about their aspirations, their desires, and to really bring that into focus and to think about how can we create the vision that will get us to where we want to be. You need the framework, the policy, you need the action plan, and it's just been a real pleasure to be a part of this effort and working with
Leda and
working with PAHI, working with Leda, and working with the communities that we've had a great pleasure of meeting.
Okay, thank you all. We want to express our appreciation, of course, to all of you, our viewers, for sharing your perspective and ideas. The insight and engagement that we've witnessed here in the last hour will be the foundation upon which we build a housing policy that reflects the needs and aspirations of our community. We want to thank all of you for watching on the cable channel, the YouTube channel, as well as Facebook. The session will remain online for you, so you can rewatch it and share it with others. Please do. Radio Cayman will also air this session at a later time. Of course, let us move forward with the knowledge that today's discussions are only the beginning. We encourage you to, those of you who didn't get your questions answered or didn't get your questions in, you can still do that by emailing ci-housingplan@public-works.org or .org. You can also email those questions and comments going forward to, or WhatsApp them to this number. It's 1-332-287-9037, because your voice does matter in this issue. We want not just to envision, but actively construct a future where affordable housing is a reality for all in the Cayman Islands. I'm Donna Bush. It's been my pleasure. Have a great afternoon.